Beginning in the eastern part of the continent, as we see the Daily Nation in Kenya, hard times impact is being felt across different sectors of the economy. Pain in pockets as dollar wars hit households. Squeeze. Weakening of shilling against greenback is not just affecting big businesses, it is also raiding consumers' wallets, while scarcity of quality brands is forcing Kenyans to go for cheaper substitutes on page 6. Everyone is feeling the impact of this the dollar scarcity and unfortunately the strengthening of the dollar against the weakening of local currencies. Now, some of the impacts we're seeing is its effect on home and business affects high cost, shortages, lifestyle, and take home. We're seeing the high cost shrinking profit margins for traders. Moving on from that story, how 600 million shilling telcos debt threatened 2022 elections. SME talking business at conference and expo on page 11. I didn't kill Assad, Maxine tells court. Rally driver wants the court to release her on bail pending determination of murder case against her. Two more stories here. How now MPs award themselves 10 billion shillings more for NGCDF and NGAAF at the back page. And the final story, why states defied IMF to retain fuel subsidy. Government moved to cushion consumers amid hard times on page 14. And that's all on the Daily Nation. Let's head over to the southern part of the continent.
All right, on the Namibian this morning, it says there, Prime Minister red flags high debt. And of course, you can find out what that is talking about. Also, Gainob shoots down unemployment grant. We can also find here a first for Namibia on e-visas and passports. There's always very few stories on the Namibian.
What is
outdated
the first for Namibia?
A first for Namibia on e-visas and passports. I'm not sure what it is about.
Okay, I'd like to read that story. I want to confirm because I know that typically Namibian visas are not typical. I don't know. I think you'd have to sum me up. Anyway, I'd like to read that story to find out what it is.
Absolutely.
It to aid travelers.
Still on the Namibian this morning. Forex trader arrested again. Gets bail after break-in at ex's apartment.
Ooh.
Interesting. And also, outdated conservation law needs reform, says a judge. Finally, inflation continues an upward trend, and that's in the economy in Namibia. Of course, I think also in Nigeria, there's reports that we, even as we're dealing with scarcity of the Naira and all of that, there's still an increase in inflation. These are the big stories on the Namibian this morning. Let's now move to Nigeria and see what we can find over there.
All right, on the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning, the big headline is talking about the new Naira pains. It says, new Naira pains persist despite fresh CBN orders. On page 9, queues chaos in banking halls as scarcity worsens. Banks expect more notes from CBN before Saturday polls. Yet again, we'll ask what really was the point of this. It's very sad to see this is happening, and many people are shielded from the reality of this. Many people, the elite, are shielded from the reality of what's happening.
I haven't seen a Naira note in more than a month. I honestly have not seen or had or spent in more than a month.
And that's because you're one of the privileged few that finds a way to maneuver with transfers here and there. It will cost you a little more, but you're able to maneuver. The people who still don't know how to work bank accounts, right? And this is going to force people, as soon as everything returns to normal, people will take away their money from the banks. I've heard it over and over again. It's going to affect the banking sector. Stories would be done about this. It's just very sad. Nigeria rejoins UN peacekeeping mission 10 years after exit on page 13. Election poster, Lagos summons principal for punishing pupil on page 13. Federal government shifts census to May on page 18. Many Nigerians have said this census, they should just share the money for us, so that Nigerians will tell them, because when they look at the amount of money that's been allocated for the counting of Nigerians, they say, you know what, we will just count our family members and send the numbers to you. Don't bother spending that much.
Call our names, we'll say present.
We'll send you email, document, videos, whatever you need, but don't spend that much of our money on this census. Private sector blames Naira crisis for inflation surge, of course. Parties warn INEC against beavers problems repeat. I do have fears about this. The Beavers has been reconfigured. It was reconfigured.
I mean, I don't have fears. I'm not contesting elections. Neither am I challenging any election. So it's those who, it's the parties who are challenging the process and, of course, the outcome of the elections, the presidential and National Assembly elections. They're the ones who will, maybe be concerned with this. I personally do not, have fears. And remember, I also didn't get my PVC, but, so I'm not going to be voting.
Even if you had your PVC, you would be on air covering the elections that day. So chances
figure
are
out a
you
way
wouldn't have been
to
able to go
get
and
it
vote.
done. But it is those who have shared their concerns, because I remember a couple of weeks ago there were fears that the reason INEC was trying to reconfigure the Beavers machines, was seemingly fraudulent, and then that reconfiguring it will wipe out the information from presidential and National Assembly elections, which were needed by those who were challenging the process and the outcome of the elections in February. So they're the ones who should be concerned, not me personally.
All right.
But of course, every person who was part of the elections, everyone who voted should also be concerned, if they feel like they didn't get exactly what they expected as the outcome.
Still talking about elections, Afenifere leader congratulates Tinubu, endorses Sanwo-Olu, and final story, fuel consumption hits 80 million daily, and that's on page 21. And that's all we can take out of the Punch newspaper. Let's still stay in Nigeria.
Still in Nigeria, on the Nation newspapers this morning, banks run out of old and new Naira notes to pay customers.
We should soon start exchanging shillings, cowries, go to the beach and use that as...
At this point, it's sad. Also, governorship battle hots up in Lagos and Oyo. It says here, Lagos PDP chieftains defect to APC. Support swells for Seyi Makinde. And also why Nigeria Air may not fly before May 29th. Food, petrol prices raise inflation to 21.91%. And that's also on the Nation newspapers this morning. Just a few of them, actually. Not very many stories. Sanwo-Olu lifts Akere market victims with 100 million naira. And finally, of course, a writer to the initial story that I shared. CBN fails to honor cash request. Branches shot. Wow. These are the big stories on the Nation newspapers this morning. And these are the stories that we can share this time.